31 years later, I'm still south. And my dad says I deserve that my son went away, and my daughter's threatening to move away as well. So I don't know what's wrong with me. They're just leaving me, but I get it, because you have to follow God's plan for your life. And sometimes the plan takes you away from the things that are comfortable, like Lake Kristi. You know, going to Florida for me 31 years ago was one of the most difficult decisions I could make, because this is where I had grown up. This is where my support system was. This is where my mom and dad had gotten bulldozers and hired Harvey Lewis's construction company to come out and dig a private lake called Lake Kristi. It's in Grimsland. How do you leave that? How do you leave people who have done so much for you? My dad's company here. I remember being in those transitional months where you're trying to figure out where you're going. What are you doing? And it doesn't matter if we're seniors, like these two girls who people are starting to ask them, what are you going to do? Doesn't matter if you're graduated and you've got this plan, or maybe you're like me, you're 50 years old and then maybe even older, and you still are kind of wondering what next? What next? Up until that point, I was 18 years old. Up until that point, I'd always just done what my parents told me to do. Get in the car, you got in the car. Go to church, you went to church. Be home at 10, you be home at 10 or whatever. I think I had to be home at 8 o'clock, Ivy. I think that's when I had to be home. So, no, just kidding. But at that point in my life, it was the first time that I realized I had to make a decision. And I had to make a decision that would impact other people. And so I did something I had never really done before. I prayed. And I asked God to help me with that decision, because I was so afraid I was going to mess up everything if I made the wrong decision. And I just want to go ahead and put everybody's mind at ease. You cannot mess up everything that God has for you. You can miss out on it at certain seasons of your life, but you won't mess it up. Because if you come over here, God's going to come over there, and He's going to bring you back to where you are to be. And that's what He did for me. But I was so thankful in 1988 when I was saying those prayers, and I'm like, God, I need a sign. So there I am on the back roads of Grimsland, North Carolina, and you will not believe this, but this car passed me with a Florida license plate and pulled right in front of me. Now, that has not happened very often in my life, where I have gotten literal signs from God, like this is where you're to go. And I don't even know if that's what that was. But for me, at 18 years old, it was the sign I needed. And I went. And my parents, of course, gave me their blessing, because they knew for me to be the best I could be, I needed to be skiing with the best. I needed to be training with the best. And I need to be where it was hot year round. And everybody who water skis ends up in Orlando. So that's how I ended up there. Went to University of Central Florida on a water ski scholarship. And I met this handsome football player who lived on a lake who didn't have a boat. And I had a boat and didn't have a lake. So it was a match made in heaven. And so he was 19 years old. I was 20. I married a younger man. And we started dating. And 4 years later, we were married. And then we graduated from University of Central Florida. Then we moved to the Gainesville, Florida area. I went to the University of Florida College of Law. We thought that would be a romantic adventure to go to law school. So here was Kristi's plan. I was going to have me an attorney for a husband, because I knew that would make some parents proud. So I filled out his application, and we went. And neither one of us practiced a day in our life. And we both passed the bar, and we always said we're licensed to sue, but he went into construction, and God's plan for me was to go into full-time ministry. Now, let me tell you something. At your age, that would have scared me half to death, because I was so afraid of God's plan for my life. And I had really run from it, thinking that if I followed God's plan, and I love that the song that you chose and the verse you chose that was also, again, in that video, that fun video, is about we have our plans, but God orders our steps. So, my plan was to be this champion water skier, to be the best in the world. I was going to be an attorney. I was going to be successful at all these things because that was how I was, raised. Not in a bad way, but you were about excellence. And I took excellence over perfection, type A all the way. And so those were the things that I was chasing after. I remember Tim and I had been married at this point for 4 years. We had graduated from college. I'm studying for the Florida bar. I am 11 weeks pregnant. I'm training because we have the U.S. Open water ski tournament at Lake Kristi, and there's no way I can change my plans and not ski, because who in the world am I if I'm not Kristi the skier? And how can I possibly not ski when it seemed to me at the time all of Greenville was coming out to watch me ski? And we did have about 10,000 people out at the lake there to watch Kristi the skier perform on Kristi's lake. And so here I am, studying, going to take that bar, can't stop skiing because, the doctor said, just keep doing what you're doing. Well, he didn't know what I did. And so here I am, just doing what I do, and you saw it. And I was telling my daughter, last week we were at the U.S. Masters water ski tournament. And at that point, this is how crazy my mind was, and I'm sorry, y'all probably going to think I'm really bad of me after this, but I knew I was the only one that knew I was pregnant, my husband and I. And I was supposed to be on bed rest because they told me I was most likely miscarrying. But my plan was I had to ski. And so I skied at that tournament, and I ate it. Like, you think that fall was bad? I mean, I've had so many concussions, and my daughter wonders why I can't remember anything. You saw the hits to the head. I mean, that water is not soft when you're hitting it at 70 miles an hour, but that was how I operated. I had to ski. And so when I'm at the U.S. Open event at Lake Kristi, and I'm pushing myself, and all this stomach pain started coming out. Well, I'd had stomach pain my whole life, so I thought, I'm just going to push through, and this is my plan. I got to keep going. I got to keep skiing. And I end up in the hospital, and I'm a mess. And here I am, hooked up to morphine, watching the news report from Lake Kristi in the hospital. Back then was called Pitt Memorial Hospital. Now it's Vidant. And I'm looking at the reporter there at the lake, and I'm in the hospital, pregnant, that not many people know. And I looked at my husband, and I got in a skiing position on the floor of the hospital with the morphine pump, and I said, if you can sneak me out of here, and you can get me to the lake, I can ski. Now, I hadn't planned to share any of this. I was going to start with Jeremiah 29:11. So this is for somebody in here, and it's probably not even on this row. It's for someone in here that you've got your plans, and you are making everybody crazy all around you, like me making my husband. Come on, get me out to the lake. Now, why was I like that? Now, I meet a lot of people throughout these past years that have addictions to drugs, to pornography, to gambling, to different things. My addiction was to performance. 3 P's: performance, people-pleasing, and perfectionism. And those 3 things almost killed me. Literally. There were moments like you heard and there, and I was glad my parents weren't here because they have a hard time with that video because they never knew any of this was going on in my mind, this struggle for my identity. Because I was good at putting the face on, I was taught when you come out of the water, no matter what you skied like, if you fell or if you won, you are congenial, you're nice to people, and you smile. And you look people in the eye. You don't cry in front of people. I mean, it wasn't in other ways, just people are watching you, so you keep it together. So my crying spot was the stinky portalet. That's where I'd run to at a tournament and just let it all loose because I didn't want anybody to see that my heart was broken, that I was hurting, that I was frustrated. Even when I would come home the winner, I knew there was always room for improvement. There was always one more buoy to run, one more foot and jump, one more trick that you could learn. And so it was never enough. I was never enough in my eyes. And I'm always so careful to make sure my parents know, yeah, they pushed me, but they pushed me in a healthy way. But I put a lot of pressure on myself. When you're looking at a lake that's named after yourself, and you're introduced as, your daughter, the skier, and different things like that, your identity becomes in what you do. And I'm here to tell you, if I could go back to 18 years old, I would say, and I know you're a little older looking than 18, but yeah, just a little bit. But you can attest to this, that you're more than what you do. You're more than that pat on the back that people give you. You're more than that diploma. And it took me a long time to realize that. My whole identity was in Kristi the skier, being Kristi the daughter, being Kristi the wife, the mom, the minister. So let me tell you, my plans got changed. I was going to be a skier until like my 90s. That was my plan. And there are skiers in their 90s. Well, in my early 30s, and I'll be 50 in February. So early 30s, this is almost 20 years ago, that I just did the math. I was coming to the end of my career, and my body was I was pushing it. And it was time for me to have many, many surgeries. I had 16 surgeries, and the last ones were my pelvis being reconstructed from a birth defect. And I had skied as long as I could. And this is funny, but water skiing was the only sport I could do. I could not run, I couldn't jump, any type of aerobic pounding activities. I had to stop jumping and tricking, but I could slalom. And I made it until I was 34 years old, and then I had to set the skis aside. I had to have my pelvis reconstructed, and I had to start looking in and realize I can't do this my whole life. And if I'm not Kristi the skier, who am I? And whose am I? And so going back to that event at Lake Kristi, that was a very pivotal moment, because the last I told you, I'm begging my husband to sneak me out. Well, he never listens to me, so that's good, because he didn't take me. In fact, I got back to the hospital bed, and they came over and they were examining me, and they mentioned this is going to be weird to say in church, but my husband looked at the doctor and says, "Why does her belly button look like that?" It was like this big. And they're like, "Because she's pregnant." He goes, "But she's not showing." And they thought my stomach was this big because I was pregnant. They didn't realize at 11 weeks I wasn't even showing. I was having bowel obstructions. And when they immediately rushed me to the hospital, they went in there and they said I was about 30 minutes from dying. And what are my thoughts? Get me to the lake. Because I have to complete my plan. I have to defend my title. And if I don't, who am I? And so they did the surgery. Fortunately, my son, Ty, he made it through all of his mom's crazy adventures. And that started an adventure of surgeries, for 16 surgeries. And God would give me the grace. I never felt like it was time to stop skiing. And I was starting to pray about that, because my mentality at that point was, God, are you punishing me? Are you trying to teach me something? I mean, that was the mentality that I grew up with, that if bad things happen to you, you must be being bad. Now I know, and I feel with all my heart, and maybe some disagree, but I believe Satan knew how important water skiing was to me. And he thought, if I take this from her, I'm going to take her down. But what he didn't realize is that the lower I got, and you've been their pastor, the lower you get. That's why I love prison ministry, because they're at the low. That's the only way you can look up. And so I started realizing, okay, since I was 4 years old, I have chased after these things, but the minute they're gone, guess what? That sport goes on without me. Someone else took home my paycheck. The sponsors started paying someone else to ski for them and using them in the ads. And not one magazine ever mentioned me for that whole year. Not like, where is the world record holder? Where is this girl that has won all these trophies? Never even mentioned. They just started covering somebody else. And I was like, what is this all about? Our name is kind of known in the water sports world with Overtons and different things. It's like, hello? I've spent all my life chasing after these red buoys. I've spent my whole life trying to please sponsors that have just picked somebody else. All this work, and it's gone. And that's what happened. So I started looking. I was like, okay, there's got to be more than this. And I sure hope so. Otherwise, life is just, as it says in Ecclesiastes, completely meaningless. If chasing after red buoys and fame and careers and diplomas and doctorates and all of this money, different things that we chase after, if that's life, meaningless. And so then I started looking in and up. And I realized, you know what? There is more. There is so much more. And the thing is, I had heard about that more my entire life. I had heard about Jesus since I could breathe. I was in Grace Church constantly. I could win. I was very competitive. The Bible drills to find, who can get there first, I was going to win. I knew where they were. I knew about Jesus. I could tell you all about him, but I didn't know him. And that's the danger, I think, with being in a Christian environment all the time, is that you hear it, you sing it. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, but we have no idea what it means. We don't know that Jesus gave his life for us because he loves us. He loves us so much. I didn't get it. I thought he was a judge that was just coming down with a hammer, waiting for me to fall down. I didn't realize he was like a loving father that when I fell down, like the boat kept coming around and coming around and coming around to pick me up. I didn't realize that if I got off the dock with God, he was going to take me on an adventure that used everything that I loved, every experience that I've ever had for his glory. And it would change lives, unlike this plan I had gone on, which was all about me, all about trophies, all about performing, pleasing people, being perfect, which I learned the hard way, there is no such thing. And so, finally, I was like, okay, God, I'm going to step off this dock with you, this place where I'm comfortable, this place where it's just head knowledge, and I'm going to step out into the deep, like that song, he calls us out upon the water, to places that are unknown, where feet may fail. It's so funny to me when I speak to kids and they ask me, they're like, have you ever fallen? They think a world champion's never fallen. I'm like, did I fall? Every single day I fell. But in the midst of falls and failures, I became a world champion. Why? Because I got up. And in your life and in your journey with God, you're going to fall. You may stumble, but it says the righteous keep getting back up because they have a power source, God, like that boat that keeps coming back around and coming back around. He's got his lifeline, Son, Jesus, like that rope that you just grab hold on. And then it's up to you whether or not you're going to stay in the waters of guilt and shame and anger and self-hate and bitterness, or if you're going to say, hit it. Hit it, God. That's what I used to say. If you're wondering, like, what is hit it? And that's what you said, I think, when I was coming over there, like, hit it, Kristi. That's what I would say to the boat driver when I was ready to go. And sometimes I didn't feel like it. And sometimes I was confused, and sometimes I was hurt, and sometimes my heart was broken. But I kept getting off that ski dock and saying, hit it, and became a champion water skier. And I realized that was all God was asking me to do, was to step out of that place of comfort, that place of doubt, that place of fear. Like, God, if I step out, where are you going to take me? Well, you know what? Jesus loves me. He is for me. He is not against me. You sang that song today. He is for me, not against me. And so I could step off with him, and I may have all these questions that I don't understand, but I can step off with him because of one thing, because I trust his love for me. And if he gave up what was most precious to him, his son, won't he give me everything else? And so I started trusting that plan. Yes, I still had dreams, but then I realized these dreams and these things that I'm good at and these passions are God-given to me. I just needed to then take them and give them to him. And then he took water skiing and he gave it purpose. He gives lessons. He gives, out of all the experiences and opportunities, I could go take them and give them back to him and say, God, here's all the trophies. Here's everything. What do you want to do with it? He's like, I want you to use it. I want you to go tell people that it's not over. That when they fall down, that I'm a loving God and I'm coming back around. I want you to go tell them the story about how your brother would come pick you up. My brother was 4 or 5 years old driving the boat for me. Can you imagine? I mean, it was crazy. We have him on video one time, and I am screaming at him. I was 4.5 years older. And, my kids never fight, but my brother and I, my parents must have done something wrong. So my brother and I fought all the time. And I'm kidding. No, we did, but my kids fight too. But my brother would come pick me up, and I would be so angry at myself for falling, but I would take it out on him, the 4.5-year-old kid. And I would just blame him. This is your fault I fell. You weren't going the right speed. I would spit water in his face. And I'm sure I'd give it a couple of wiggles, before I let it go. And he looked at the camera one time, all snaggletooth. He's like, I don't get no respect. And he didn't. I would torture that kid. And now he's, a man, a 45-year-old man. And we were talking about it. He goes, you did do that to me, didn't you? I said, yes. I said, I'm sorry. But the cool thing is what God just allows me to go into prisons and different places and say is that no matter how many times I blamed him, no matter how many times I spit water in my brother's face, he came back around and he kept picking me up. And God's like, you go into prisons and you go tell them about me and my love. It's unconditional. It's never ending. And that they can trust me, and that I can take all the mess and all the past and I can use it for a great plan. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, and they're good. I was thinking about that verse yesterday in Jeremiah 29:11, and we quote it all the time. But we don't realize that the people at that point, they're in exile, and they're miserable, and they're in a place they don't want to be. And God's saying, hey, where you are right now, it may not be your plan, but I want you to thrive where you are. It says, don't waste away. Don't waste away there. You're in a season right now, in a place, and it's not what your plan was, but you're there. Thrive. Be fruitful. Multiply. Live. Bless those that curse you. Work for their welfare. Maybe some of you have jobs where you feel like you're in captivity and you're having to go work. God's saying, go thrive there. Because he says, for I know the plans I have for you. And I hear you and I see you and I'm going to rescue you and I'm going to come and I'm going to help you. And they're good plans. And I love it because he says, I know, the creator of this universe knows the plans that he has for you. You don't have to know them because he knows them. And all you have to do is listen for them. Cut the phone off. Listen. I love it when your guitar a while ago was acting up. She's so in tune. Is it Caitlin? So in tune with that guitar that when it's in sound right, none of us noticed it. You noticed it because you're so in tune and you're listening. All she did, she kept playing and she just reached back. She made an adjustment because she knew something was off. God just says, you know what? You draw close to me, I'm going to lead you down your plan. And you're going to know because you're listening, you're drawing close. And the Bible says in John that you will hear his voice because he speaks to his sheep, and we're his sheep. He's going to lead us. And when you start getting in an area where you're out of tune and things are off, you're going to know it because you're so in tune with him that you'll know, okay, I need to just make this little adjustment and come back. And that's what I love about God. It's not like if your heart is to chase after him and to seek his will, he says, you'll find me. If you acknowledge me, I will direct your path. If you want my will for your life, I will give it to you. And a lot of people sit there paralyzed in fear saying, what if I mess up? What if I go the wrong way? Well, if your heart is for God and his things, you're not going to. And if you do, he'll correct you, and he's not going to beat you over the head. He's happy you're getting off the dock. He was happy when Peter got out of the boat and walked. And I love that video because it says that 20, 30 years from now, you're not going to sit here. You may regret some of the things you did. We all do, but you're really going to regret the things you didn't do because you were so afraid. So I encourage everybody here to dream big God dreams. For he knows the plans that he has for you. And it says in Ephesians 3:20 that those plans are abundantly, exceedingly, far above anything you can ever imagine or hope for. So the biggest thing you can dream for your life, God says, you think that's something. Wait till you see this. And if you acknowledge me, I'm going to direct your path. If you seek me, you're going to find me. If you thirst for me, I'm going to fill you up. And it's an adventure. You know, when I surrendered to the Lord my life, and I finally said, God, I want more than what I'm experiencing. And I don't want just church. I don't want to come just sit on a pew. I need you. So I got in the Word, and I started to get to know God. Now I have a question. I see you have a Band-Aid on your finger. Is that from turning the Bible so much? Let's go with that. Okay. Because he got a theology degree, and I saw that Band-Aid, and I was like, I bet he's been doing this, and he's got blisters. That's what transformed my life, was this. I used to just flip it open because I knew I had to read my Bible, so I'd go, and that would be my verse for the day. Check. I've read my Bible. I said my prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. Pray the Lord my soul to keep. And I'd go to bed and I'd sit on church pew. That's all I knew. That's all I knew. And it might be something, that's all you know. There is so much more. There is so much more. There is a God who you do not have to be afraid of. There is a God who has such a big plan for you, and you can't see it because if you could, it would scare you half to death. If I was sitting there and knew I'd be going into prisons, and I'd be taking my boat into prisons, and there was a man standing on the platform behind me, the officer, with his guns, and I knew that's where God was taking me, I would have been scared to death, and I would have never stepped out. But what it is it's a journey. And there's no place I'd rather be. I cannot wait to get in there because I get to see what God's doing, and it's not me. When you're open to God's plans and then he puts you somewhere, he has worked it all out. He has prepared you. He has prepared it. He marries the two together, and there is something going on. Your part is just to say, God, not my will, but yours. I remember the first time that I started to sense that I was supposed to go do prison ministry. I was a water skier. And I had gone into ministry. I had a 501c3. We used water sports in our outreach called In His Wakes. That made sense. But then one day, a gentleman from the water sports community who's in prison for 15 years reached out to me. And he wrote me. And he had been in ministry with me. He had spoken at many church services that I had held, and he had had a moral failure. And it put him away for 15 years. And he reached out to me. He says, I just want to say I'm sorry for the harm I caused your ministry. And I sensed the Lord putting on my heart to go visit him. And I asked my husband, what do you think? He says, I think you should go. Don't let me go with you. That's his motto. And so I went down to Miami Federal Prison. And I walked into that place with my eyes wide open, not because I was scared, but because I was excited, because I knew God was up to something. And if you walk around through life with your ears open to hear, and your eyes open to see, and your heart open to feel what God is seeing, hearing, and feeling, he'll show you his heart. He'll show you. He'll start to move you. So I go into that prison and I sit down with Bill for 3 hours in this room about this size, and God's like, look around you. Now, when I say God said, do I hear an audible voice going, God said, look around you? No, I just get this sense in my spirit. Look around. What do you see? I see people. I see husbands holding their baby for the first time. I see little kids running around who don't have a father because their father's locked up. I see a mother who drives here every single week from Orlando for the last 6 years, and she's got 2 more years to do it, and she's excited because he's almost going to be out in 2 years. I see families, and I just started taking it in, and then I heard this in my heart. I want you to go to them. I want you to tell them that it's not over. That I'm a God of another chance. That they're not a number, that I see them. I know the hairs on their head. You go tell them about hit it. That I'm the power source that'll never fail them. They've just been hooked up to the wrong power source. Go tell them about me. Teach them about the real me. Not about the one they've heard, the one that they've questioned, and the one that they've blamed. Tell them about the real me. Tell them how to get connected to me. Teach them about hit it, God. So I left there and I thought, okay, that's a tall order. But God, if you want me there, I'm open to go, but I need you to make it happen. And see, this is how God works. When you do that, he makes it happen. He's already prepared me. How? Through water skiing. He had already prepared me. How? Because at 15, 16 years old, this little man named Ralph Malone, who owned Crack Craft Boats, would pull me up on stage at 15 years old in Singapore and in France and Canada, Italy, all these places. And he'd say, you're going to give your testimony, young lady. I shouldn't have been giving my testimony. I was a teenager trying to find her way. But he kept pulling me up on this stage. And God used him in my life, like he's using some of you in other people's lives, to prepare me to be a speaker. I had no idea. He took all the lessons so that I could go into prisons. He developed a writing gift that I didn't even know that I had, and had me start this magazine, which if you haven't seen, this is your pastor, which is how we met, and his story. And we've got copies for all of you. Right around there, there's a table set up. But so I left there and I was like, God, you got what I got. This is yours. If you want me to use it for prison ministry, you make it happen. And the next week, I get a call from the corrections office in Tallahassee, head of corrections for all of Florida. Somehow, this was in 2013, they had gotten this magazine and they had gotten this book. And they called me. I'd never contacted anyone. I just prayed to the Lord, who's got all the connections, and he said, we want this in every prison in Florida. And now we're in 26 states. And the Word of God and your story and stories of redemption just like it are going out. What did I have to do? I just had to say yes. I just had to be willing to go somewhere that might not be comfortable. But when you get there, wow. I get to see people come into God, get to see people healed. I get to see amazing things. And I know it's not me, because you can ask my daughter on a daily basis. I don't remember a whole lot. When I'm sitting down there, I don't even know what the message is. I try to write it, but he never lets me use it. He's just like, go up there and just be a vessel and open your mouth and be willing to just share whatever it is that I give to you. And that's what he wants from us, to be an empty vessel. With our degrees, you've got them. Give them to God. With your accolades, I have them. So that world champion platform gets me in the door. It causes a man in prison who has never even set foot in a lake to connect with me. Sometimes a completely different age group, different economic group, different race, different gender, because of the sports. Because, that's a world champion. Well, whoop-de-doo-dah. But to them, it gets them to listen so I can pour out the real champion in me, and that's God. And so I don't know, this is a different message for me today, but I know it's from his heart through mine to yours, for he knows the plans. And no matter what age you are, you can step into them, and you can take the mountain at 80 like you were at 40, just like Caleb did. I'm going to close with this because I'm probably already over my time. I don't know where we are. All right. I go in to prison, like I said, a lot. And I get the question asked to me quite often, Kristi, you always say just keep saying hit it. Just keep persevering. Just be willing to learn from your mistakes and keep going. Was there ever a time you just are so tired and you don't want to do it anymore? And that's where they are. They've just given up. When I think back to my skiing, I got knocked down for many, many reasons. Sometimes I took control. I'm going to fight against that power source. And here's the deal. When you go like this and you think you're strong, you saw those big arms I had. Now they're down here. But they were up here. If I went like this and thought I'm going to pull it, that strong boat pulled me out of position and I ate it. You saw it. So sometimes I fell because I took matters into my own hands. Maybe there's someone here, maybe those people in prison, somebody there, they took matters in their own hands. They said, I'm going to do this my way. I don't need a power source. Well, that's like me saying I can ski without a boat. Not going to happen. And so we do it ourselves and we sink. Sometimes conditions just come and they blow up on you. I remember flying to Australia and you're just like, all of a sudden the king tide's there. You have spent thousands of dollars. Nobody pays your way there. Thousands of dollars. You step off a plane after flying 20 some hours. You go to the Yarra River, which the wind's blowing this way, the current's going this way, and you have the king tide, and everybody's falling around one ball. That's not my fault. That's not their fault. Then you got the cheating factor. People cheat. So maybe, you've made mistakes. Maybe this apply it to your life. Maybe you've had conditions blow up in your life that you just couldn't help. Maybe someone cheated. Could have been a spouse. Maybe it was someone with lack of integrity and they did you wrong. I remember, and sometimes they don't even mean to. I had a French boat driver who at the World Championship, I was skiing so good. I won. He was 1/100th of a second out of time. His error. I didn't need him to help me. I lost it. It's his fault. So how do you move forward? How do you keep getting up? You forgive. You forgive. You forgive yourself for messing up. You forgive God who didn't do it, but you're angry at him. You forgive the people who hurt you and will hurt you and will hurt you again. Because that's why God says, forgive them 70 times 7,